Making the videos I make can sometimes be a challenge, to the point where I have to utilize my time very carefully. This video is basically going to be a behind the scenes in the making of a video, but I'll be explaining a lot of things and the lengths I tend to go to make the videos how they are. But before we get started, I want to talk about time. Time is always the biggest factor. I have 2 weeks to make a single video. This is between other projects, work, family, and an incredibly small social life. People who have known me for a long time will know I drop off the radar a lot and don't update social media, and it's either because I'm busy with videos or I'm just drained. Playing horror games all the time is stressful, horror games themselves are stressful, and there's enough real-world problems that can mount up too. I have anxiety problems, and the concept of not meeting deadlines that I set for myself can overwhelm me. Sometimes I just don't have it in me to continue playing stuff and I need a break. This isn't the case for most of the videos because I'm usually pretty driven to make them, and as weird as it seems, I tend to do better under pressure, even if it's not good for me. But the biggest obstacle is always time. It limits what I can do and how long I can take on a single video or project, which is actually for my own good, because with infinite time on a project, I'd simply never get it done. So the first thing is always choosing a game. Thanks to the 2-week limit, I find myself choosing shorter games or things I know I can do easily. I try to avoid using guides whenever possible and don't really watch trailers for new games because I'm usually busy. Funnily enough, it's often the comments section in my own videos where I learn of new horror games. Besides that, I often just browse Steam or the PlayStation storefront or even just eBay for horror games to try out. Over the years, I've picked up a lot of things I've meant to cover, but for one reason or another, haven't done so yet. Sadly, there's tons of reasons for me putting things off. I was originally going to cover Manhunt for Halloween 2020, but the PlayStation 2 version of the game was proving a bit too hard for me to control, and I've realised I'd wasted several hours and only done about a third of the game. And if I'd continued to play it, I've wasted too much time to finish playing it, or play another game to replace its slot in Halloween. Sometimes there's capture problems, like with Silent Hill 4 that took me 2 years to find a decent looking and playable version of the game to record. Sometimes the game just goes on forever, surpassing my 2-week limit and ending up either as a Halloween game or stuck in purgatory. Sometimes I get stuck and don't have time to return to a game, but the most common problem is that I just don't get around to starting it. The worst thing that can happen has already happened to me twice when I lost captured game footage, and I lost a lot of it. Every time I play a horror game, I record it. I'll often start several games at once and choose the one I'm most likely to finish first to focus on because I don't know how long it'll take me to play a game. My general principles for what games I choose are that the game type doesn't really matter, as long as it's generally classed as a horror game. I don't really do arcade experiences or horror-themed games, and that's mostly down to them being unable by design to live up to some of the points in the Harry Mason scale. It's unfair to set things up for failure. I don't play games that are in early access because then the review will be outdated when the full game is released, and I don't accept Steam keys from developers because I don't want to feel I have to say nice things about their game because they gave me a free copy, and I believe in supporting developers whenever possible, especially indie developers who are usually the ones crafting the most unique games. So after I've captured the game, it's onto the writing of the review. I've not been using my laptop for very long, but it's become an invaluable tool since I can take it places and work on reviews whenever a new point pops into my head to talk about. But I'm usually very efficient at writing reviews nowadays. It's often the shortest part, but usually the part that I enjoy the most. I like writing. It's only when I'm really struggling to get my point across that it ends up taking time. The Stalker Clear Sky review was by far the most challenging review to write because it's so very similar to the predecessor with a lot of the same areas and music, but it's difficult to say one is better than the other, even though it's very clear that one is better than the other. A lot of people complain the reviews are too short, and there are times I wished I'd said more, but the thing is it's usually not a lot to say about specific things, and I don't want to go into rambling, and there are a lot of things that are just obvious, and sometimes it's easier to use a game clip to explain why something isn't functional or why something is good, because then the viewer can just see what I'm talking about. I don't reference other games in the review unless it's part of the same series, and try not to compare things anymore because it makes the review come off as standoffish if I just go on about how it's not as good as the predecessors, like I used to with the Silent Hill videos. As I've become aware over the years, it's very difficult to talk about the pros and cons of a story without spoiling the story. It does feel like the goalposts keep moving for that one, and I'm not exactly sure what constitutes a spoiler anymore, hence the new spoiler warnings in the videos. I've actually been using the same template for over 3 years, and I use the most basic text editor imaginable because it's more about content than presentation. It's just a script. Besides now, no one else is ever going to see it. Ultimately though, I'm very proud of a lot of the writing I do, and I always try to improve it. Sometimes I like being dramatic, and I always try and say foreboding things because I know it will work very well with editing. When it comes to the editing, I've also been using the same editor for years. Sony Vegas 14 has really been invaluable, and I've tried others, but this is the only one that I'm really used to. I've been modifying the same template for horror reviews since 2016, making more adjustments to compensate the new things I've added to the videos. I like using the game zone atmosphere to create tense moments in the video, but I never really want to detract from the actual game. It's a review, not a movie. This does mean it's harder to edit a video when the game's atmosphere is bad or non-existent. There's just no room for creativity with things like that. I always use the game's audio and soundtrack to help me out, and that again depends on how good those things are. I'm very aware the older reviews had intro sequences that were way too long, but the original idea was that the review would be longer, and I got caught up in making custom intros for each video, which eventually became incredibly impractical. I'm a big fan of authenticity, and I use an actual VHS to make the weird distorted intros. I've been getting my videos butchered over the last few years thanks to YouTube compression, and despite spending hours on it, I've only recently learned that rendering it at 1440p will fix everything. It's a shame I didn't know that years ago, really. After that, it's just about making the thumbnail and posting it. There's not really much to talk about for this part, but after the review is done, I'm automatically spending the rest of the week on either the games for Halloween or the next review. Halloween is immensely fun for me, but also extremely difficult and stressful. Nobody asked me to do the one review every day for a whole month. I just wanted to make Halloween special. I like getting the biggest or the most unique games together for Halloween and like pacing them out, so there's kind of a natural escalation of the posting sequence, and making a big finale is something I like to do every year, but again, it's a real strain. Last year's Halloween went a lot better than the first, and that still had me making 15 of the 30 reviews in October, and I started uploading the first set in August. I've been working on them since January. I spend time before work recording games, time after work recording games, and any time when I'm not already working on a review, I spend recording games. This is why losing footage is such a crippling blow. It's a massive setback. So far for this Halloween, I've only got 2 games recorded. It's too early to tell what else will be going into the lineup for certain, but I hope it'll be a good one. That's the video, and I wanted to say thank you once again to the Patreon supporters. It means the world to me that you support the channel, and I never really imagined I'd get as popular as I am. Enough to have Patreon supporters, even though I'm barely popular at all. And thank you, and I hope this video was enlightening.